And I want you to tell me if the United States is on the right side of history or not when I show you this. Shout out to Sarah for this. She says the U.S. dropped bombs on a cancer center and medical facilities in Yemen. A cancer center. Over 151 Yemeni civilians killed and injured in the last 2 days. They are deliberately targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure. This is a war crime and a crime against humanity. This is the cancer center that they targeted. I thought they were going after the Houthis. Not somebody who has leukemia. What does somebody with lung cancer have to do with the resistance that the Houthis are doing? What does somebody who has pancreatic cancer have to do with the blockade that the Houthis were doing in the Red Sea? What did they have to do with it? So as of recently, over the weekend, Donald Trump has been more forceful about going after anyone who is upholding Palestinian resistance. Now, we talked about Mahmoud Khalil and how he basically, Mahmoud Khalil is a permanent resident, and he expressed his opinion and utilizing free speech to talk about how he wants a free Palestine. According to the Trump administration, to them, that is a bridge too far. And so they want to deport people like Mahmoud Khalil. Well, Donald Trump has ramped up further in regards to the liberation of Palestine by actually going against Yemen and now greenlighting Benjamin Netanyahu to do further genocide in Gaza. And so now he's also threatening Iran. So I want to get into this because this is also very important. And before we get into that, let me just share this really quick, because a lot of times people think, well, we had a ceasefire and so things were chill for the last couple months. No, they weren't. They were not at all. Israel has continued to murder Palestinians despite a ceasefire, because Israel they just don't want to stop. So let's get into this really quick. Let me share this with you guys first. We're going to go into this article in Electronic Intifada. If you guys want to know more about what's going on in the Middle East, especially as regards to Palestine, I highly recommend that you bookmark and go to this website for your news for that area so you can keep up to date on what's going on. But out of the Electronic Intifada says, Israel is still killing 3 people per day in Gaza. This article came out 4 days ago. So we're not going to read the whole thing. We're just going to read just a little bit. So it says, in Gaza, Israel's closure of all crossings has continued for almost 2 weeks. Palestinians are reporting severe water and food shortages as Israel uses starvation as a weapon of genocide, and the rights group Al-Haq started. So, as you can see, the tweet right here, Palestinian human rights organizations condemn Israel's use of starvation as a weapon of genocide. This is a war crime, by the way, everybody. It's a war crime, folks, because the thing is like, this is collective punishment against the people that are civilians. You're starving the civilians to get at another group. That is collective punishment. You want to know what else is collective punishment that has happened? We've had collective punishment dealt with us on this very soil. It was called 9/11. Now, despite the reasons behind what Osama bin Laden did, because he was focused on what was going on in Palestine. If you actually read the letter from Osama bin Laden, I understand his motivations, but I don't agree with his actions, because Osama bin Laden ended up killing 3,000 Americans to get at the American government. And that's the problem with the collective punishment, is that you end up harming people who have nothing to do with what is going on between factions that are fighting. Is it really a fight? It's more of it is a genocide, but you have the Palestinian resistance versus Israel. And instead of going directly after Palestinian resistance, they're actually going after the people who are innocent citizens, civilians. So this is what they've done. Let's continue on further. And this article says Israel's decision to reimpose a total blockade of all humanitarian aid entering the Gaza Strip, particularly during the month of Ramadan, is yet another example of Israel violating the ceasefire agreement and provides further proof into its manifest intent to eliminate Gaza's population by creating conditions of life calculated to bring about their destruction, and continuing breach of provisional measures of the International Court of Justice. The Palestinian Non-Governmental Organizations Network and the Association of International Development Agencies declared in a joint statement that the January 19th ceasefire proved a brief window for humanitarian operations to scale up. In just weeks, the aid organizations delivered food, medicine, reopened medical facilities, launched vaccination campaigns. During this period, the group said that humanitarian actors demonstrated that when they are finally given an enabling environment, they can do their jobs and deliver. And Israel provided that enabling delivery of aid was only a matter of will, a reality that has now underscored by choosing to use humanitarian aid as a negotiation tactic. The aid group Islamic Relief stated on March 11th that the aid trucks loaded with food and other essential aid are already in waiting to enter Gaza, but are being blocked just a few miles from desperate civilians. Gaza's entire infrastructure has been systematically destroyed by Israeli attacks, including its ability to feed itself. More than 80% of Gaza's agricultural land and more than 2/3 of its agricultural wells have been damaged or destroyed, and most cattle have been killed, leaving families in Gaza now almost entirely dependent on imported supplies. The scarcity has caused prices in local markets to skyrocket, making even the most basic necessities unaffordable for the poorest and most vulnerable. Here is the thing. I want you to think about this. If we were to go to war with another country, let's say hypothetically, I don't think China will ever escalate anything, because China ain't about that. But let's just say hypothetically, in another universe, China says, okay, we're going to escalate things. And then they decide to destroy all, like 80% of our agriculture, our farms and our ranches in this country. And then our areas of water are taken out by this country. Can you imagine the amount of carnage that would happen because of that? How many people would starve to death? How many people would be subject to other diseases because you don't have clean water? Then this subjects you to infections, dysentery, many other different things. And yet this is what Israel's doing, because they literally have control of it. So the problem is that people go, well, Hamas, when in reality it's Israel that's actually doing the carnage. They're the ones that are holding back the humanitarian aid. They're the ones that are preventing people from actually being able to eat so that they can still survive. They're the ones that are holding back the water and the fuel and the electricity in order for people to be able to live. And so this is what's been going on this entire time. Entirely. since the ceasefire started. Because to Israel, a ceasefire really just means a slowdown of the genocide. We're not going to genocide as much. To the Palestinian resistance, a ceasefire means a ceasefire. That means everything stops. So who's holding their end of the bargain more? Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. I know you're talking to me through the screen. So that's what's been happening. So let's get into what's been going on with Trump. So over the last couple of days, there has also been bombings against the Houthis in Yemen. Now, remember, the Houthis are a group that are against the genocide. And the Houthis are a Yemeni group that have been pushing against Israel for what it's been doing. And by doing so, they've been essentially taking over ships that have been trying to go in through the Red Sea to import goods into Israel. And they've been forcing them to stop and turn around. They've been blocking that. So they essentially enforced a blockade saying, if you don't stop this genocide of the Palestinian people, we will continue this blockade against these ships. And I talked about this before. So here's the geography. So for me, it's right here, but for you guys, it'll be right here. But here's Africa, right? And then right in that little corner, right near the Horn of Africa, right? Then you have the Red Sea. And that strait that it goes through, Yemen is also right there too. So they can block that area. And a lot of ships that are coming from the east, right? Well, they can just go through the Red Sea to get to Israel. But if that strait in the Red Sea is blocked, they have to go all the way around the Cape of South Africa and all the way back up and then into the Mediterranean before they can get to the Suez Canal. Meaning it adds about 2 weeks of time for the goods to reach Israel. So this is essentially part of the BDS. It's just the Houthis are doing it, you know, and they doing it. Boycott, divestment, sanction. And by the Houthis, blockade. And apparently Donald Trump doesn't like that. Why? Because Donald Trump is controlled by corporate interests. Israel is a corporate interest. So I'm going to share this article here. What's happening? And now Donald Trump is saying, well, if the Houthis attack us, we're going to blame Iran. Let's get into this. It says, Trump says Iran will suffer dire consequences for any more Houthi attacks. So this came out yesterday. So it says President Donald Trump on Monday said that further attacks or retaliation by the Houthis will be considered an attack by Iran and would face dire consequences. Trump threats come after the United States launched a new series of airstrikes against Yemeni group beginning Saturday. The Houthis on Sunday claimed to have thwarted a hostile attack the enemy was preparing to launch against our country. A U.S. official told ABC News that the Houthis fired 11 drones and 1 ballistic missile at the USS Harry S. Truman aircraft carrier in the Red Sea on Saturday, none of which came close to hitting any U.S. vessels. In a post on Truth Social, Trump called the Houthis sinister mobs and thugs and said their attacks emanate from and are created by Iran. So, like I said, the Houthis are about that life. And Houthi said, oh, is that U.S. Military vessels? All right, they ain't going nowhere near. They're like, stop. Ghetto time. They said no. And so this is what is going on. And now Trump is saying, if the Houthis do this, I'm blaming Iran. Let's continue. So says Trump said Iran is dictating every move, moving them, giving them the weapons, supplying them with the money and highly sophisticated military equipment, and even so-called intelligence. Every shot fired by the Houthis will be looked upon from this point forward as being shot fired from the weapons and leadership of Iran, and Iran will be held responsible and suffer the consequences, and those consequences will be dire. On Sunday, the Houthis claimed to have fired 18 ballistic missiles and a drone in 2 separate attacks over the previous 24 hours. All drones were down by fighters, 10 shot down by Air Force planes and 1 Navy plane, while the ballistic missile was not intercepted as it fell far short of the vessel. Trump describes the U.S. strikes as a decisive and powerful military action against the Iran-backed group. The Houthis have been targeting Western-linked shipping and launching munitions into Israel since the fall of 2022 in protests of Israel's war against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. This is the narrative that's being painted right now, and I just want to let you guys know. This sentence here that says, in protest of Israel's war against Hamas and the Gaza Strip. Let's make one thing abundantly clear. This is not a war, it's a genocide. If you have a paramilitary group, right, which is a merry band of people who have some munitions that are fighting against a nuclear superpower, is that a war? Because a war denotes that there are 2 equal opposing sides. But it's not a war. And it's not that they're trying to defend Hamas. They're trying to prevent the destabilization and the destruction of the Palestinian people. And what Hamas and the PFLP and many other groups are doing, they're providing resistance to the settler colonial state of Israel, because Israel is trying to force them off their land so that they can take it over. That's what it's about. And if anybody wants to learn more, you can always do your research and go into it. You have many different resources, right? You have many people like Norm Finkelstein, Max Blumenthal, Aaron Mate. You have Miko Peled. You have, I'm trying to go through my brain here. You talk to people like, look at Norm Finkelstein, like read some of his books, but get into and talk to people who are Palestinian about what they've been going through. And by the way, this didn't start on October 7th. This started back in really 1948, when they decided that they were going to settle, really just take over and kick off the people off their land. So this goes way back because of greed and selfishness, and then real anti-Semitism from the British government. If you want to talk about anti-Semitism, because the British government didn't want any Jewish people around them. They were like, go over there. Go over there to Palestine. Kick them off their land if you need to, but we don't want you here. That's basically what it was. And so with that being said, this whole thing of saying that it's a war really is a misdirect, right? And by the way, everybody points at Hamas and says, oh, it's Hamas, as if they're the only resistance fighters. No, there are other resistance fighters. Hamas may be one of the most famous, right? Which they are, yes, a Muslim group. But you also have the PFLP, which is specifically a Marxist-Leninist group that has no religious ties. And they're also resisting Israel. By the way, they're also doing things like mutual aid and direct action against the occupying force. What is that sound like? Who's that sound like? So they're resisting. And the United States and Israel are considering anybody who resists their stranglehold, their hegemony as terrorists. Let me remind you, up until 2008, Nelson Mandela was declared a terrorist by the United States. Yeah. Right. Nelson Mandela, the same guy that got to visit the White House and sit with President Obama. Yeah, they considered him a terrorist. So with that being said, resisting occupation and apartheid and a genocide, does that really make you a bad person? If I see a poor old man getting beat up by a bunch of young men, if I decide to help that poor old man, am I the one in the wrong? If you see a child being beat up by an adult and you clock that adult to keep them from harming that child, are you in the wrong? Let me ask some of you who may be coming in to, either RBN or my channel for the first time and hearing this. Let me ask you this, though. Does an occupied people have the right to defend themselves? If your answer is yes, welcome. Because you believe in Palestinian liberation. You believe in liberation of all the peoples around the world that have been taken over forcibly by a lot of these Western governments. Anyway, let's continue. I just wanted to nip that in the bud because it gets on my nerves when they try to paint that narrative. But this is ABC News. They're going to be they're a corporate-owned news website. They're owned by Disney, essentially. So of course they have certain interests that are corporate. It says they have waged an unrelenting campaign of piracy, violence, and terrorism against Americans and other ships, aircrafts, and drones. That's what Trump said on Truth Social. We will use overwhelming lethal force until we have achieved our objective. It says Lieutenant James Alexis Grinkiewicz, the head of the operations at the Joint Staff, told reporters on Monday the Pentagon press briefing that the U.S. struck 30 targets at multiple locations on Saturday. There were additional strikes conducted on Sunday. And the operation continued on Monday. It will continue in the coming days until we achieve the president's objectives. Well, that's the funny part right here. 30 targets at multiple locations Saturday and additional conducted on Sunday. You know what's funny about this? ABC News doesn't give the details of what those strikes were and what they consisted of. But we know. Why? Because the Yemenis talk. The Houthis talk. The people who are for Palestinian liberation, they talk. And they let us know exactly what's going on, right? They sing like canaries. And we are grateful that they do. Because I want to share with you what has been happening. So let me share this really quick. This was on March 16th, Saturday. Make sure this is big enough. And I want you to tell me if the United States is on the right side of history or not when I show you this. Shout out to Sarah for this. She says the U.S. dropped bombs on a cancer center and medical facilities in Yemen. A cancer center. Over 151 Yemeni civilians killed and injured in the last 2 days. They are deliberately targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure. This is a war crime and a crime against humanity. This is the cancer center that they targeted. I thought they were going after the Houthis. Not somebody who has leukemia. What does somebody with lung cancer have to do with the resistance that the Houthis are doing? What does somebody who has pancreatic cancer have to do with the blockade that the Houthis were doing in the Red Sea? What did they have to do with it? And yet this is what your government is doing. So anybody that's MAGA and says, oh, well, Trump is an anti-war president, here's your sign. Because as far as I know, Trump has never been anti-war. This is the same guy that had General Qasem Soleimani murdered, fired missiles into Iran, risking us war with Iran, and going after an Iranian general that was trying to keep peace in the region, that was literally fighting ISIS, that was literally fighting terrorists, actual terrorists, ones that were created by the CIA in the United States. Oh, but they didn't like that. They don't like that. They don't like that. But this is what they're doing. Hospitals being bombed with your public dollars. The money that should be going to you for housing, healthcare, education, food, the money that should be going to you is going to kill other people so that they can get their hands on the land. And then once they get their hands on the land and the resources, who gets control of it? The corporations that also exploit and violate us. And you mean to tell me that we have to choose between blue fascism and red fascism? Because make no mistake, even if we had a President Harris, this would still be going on, because she made it abundantly clear that she would be backing things like this too. So much for that black girl magic. Like Dr. Ruha Benjamin said, our blackness, and for people like Kamala Harris, her womanness is not in itself enough for us to put our trust in them. All skin folk ain't kinfolk. And so for anybody that's black, that's claiming that, oh my goodness, we should have elected Kamala Harris, you're in favor of electing an overseer. Which in my view is a coontastic view. So it's really semantics, Wesley. Essentially, it's the government that is over people like you and me. Well, I'm not sure what country you're at in, Wesley. But you're right. It is the ruling class government, basically, that they own. But they keep us subjected to it, right? But we're on the same page. So yeah, that's what's going on. That's what is going on as of recently. And one of the things that I want to share is that this is going to continue. This is not going to stop. Let me share this. White House spokeswoman and dollar store Pam Bondi, Caroline Levitt, confirms America was informed in advance and Trump personally gave Israel the green light to resume the genocide in Gaza. Let's just listen to what she says, and let's go.
Well, the Trump administration and the White House were consulted by the Israelis on their attacks in Gaza tonight. And as President Trump has made it clear, Hamas, the Houthis, Iran, all those who seek to terrorize not just Israel, but also the United States of America will see a price to pay. All hell will break loose. And all of the terrorists in the Middle East, again, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, Iranian-backed terror proxies, and Iran themselves should take President Trump very seriously when he says he is not afraid to stand for law-abiding people. He is not afraid to stand up for the United States of America and our friend and our ally Israel. And we know that these successful defensive strikes that took place over the weekend against the Houthis in the Red Sea were indeed successful. We took out some of their leaders, and the Defense Department is set to continue with this campaign if the Houthis continue with their retaliatory measures. The president is going to stand for the navigation, freedom of navigation of our seas, which is a very basic principle that unfortunately the previous administration refused to stand for, and that's why we are in this mess in the Middle East in the first place. President Trump inherited a lot of problems, Sean, because of the incompetence and the weakness of the Biden-Harris administration, but he is focused on fixing them, and our allies and our adversaries better take him seriously.
So all hell will break loose. Okay. It's been loose for years. And this is all to support a government that continues to genocide people. You know, a question I have to anybody that's serving in the military that's under assignment to Yemen or Palestine or any place like that. And if you're, let's say, the pilot that has to bomb the hospital, let me ask you this one question. Is it not worth catching a court-martial for disobeying an order just so that you don't commit a war crime? Wouldn't you rather go to jail than to murder innocent lives? Wasn't the oath to protect our country against enemies, foreign and domestic? What enemies are in a cancer hospital? Don't worry, I'll wait. That's the question I have. If I was in the military, and let's say I was one of the airmen that had to drop bombs on a Yemeni hospital, or let's say you're on a gunship and you have to shoot at a Yemeni hospital, when are you going to actually disobey an unlawful order. And wouldn't that also mean a unlawful order that is against international law? See, this is why I like a lot of the Vietnam vets, because a lot of the Vietnam vets had spines. And they said, you know what, we're not doing this anymore. I hope to see more people who are in the military say, you know what, we're not doing that. Absolutely not. That's against international law. Fine, court-martial me. And then the rest of your fellow soldiers stand with you. The people who outrank you, stand with them. The people who are below you in rank, stand with them. Because there's going to come a time where we're going to have the Nuremberg trials 2.0. And we're not going to accept I was just following orders. What did Magneto say in the movie? I know it's fictional, but Magneto said, my life was at the mercy of men just following orders. Let's continue. I want to share this as well. Make sure I can get this up. Is this? Hang on. Oh, there it is. Okay. I want to share what a doctor shows that's going on in Gaza right now. I only watched the first 4 seconds of it, and I immediately got emotional. But it is important to see. Let me share. It says, doctor describes situation in Gaza. This is from Breakthrough News. Shout out to you guys.
We've worked throughout the entire night. We haven't stopped. The bombing has been non-stop. We've run out of ketamine. We've run out of propofol. We've run out of all painkillers.
First of all, let's make it abundantly clear. So I'm not exactly sure what ketamine is used for in the medical field, but propofol is an anesthetic. It's anesthesia. And if you're running out of anesthesia, but you need to do an essential operation, then what does the patient have to go through? I hate to get gruesome, but I'm going to show it to you guys. I got a catheter in my chest for dialysis, and I had to get it done without anesthesia. All I got was local anesthetic and some sedation, and this thing hurt like hell. I was almost in tears. Just from this, just from a minor incision and a tube going into my artery. As a dialysis patient, this was just a few weeks ago that I had to go through this. I have scars from my surgery, by the way. So can you imagine what it's like for someone having to go through an amputation with no anesthesia at all? None. Is that the type of government that you want to back, where they're doing things like that? No painkillers? Do you know how painful some of these procedures are? And it's not just even the operation, it's the post-surgery as well. If you're running out of painkillers, local anesthetics, and anesthesia, imagine the suffering that people have just so that they can stay alive. This is why we talk about this, because we got to humanize our human family around the world who are suffering because of this exploitative system. Let's continue.
We can't sedate anyone. We can't give them any analgesia. When we intubate people, they wake up and they're choking because we have no sedation.
Oh my God.
There are 7 girls getting their legs amputated, no anesthesia. The bombing is still going on. The room is still shaking. I haven't slept. We went to bed at about 1 o'clock, and at 1:30 the bombing started. It's about 10 a.m. now. Just gone back to my room. I'm lightheaded. I'm dizzy. And I mean, it was just mostly women and children, burnt head to toe, limbs missing, heads missing. You know, there's a video I put up on my story of me doing the chest drain. The gentleman that did the chest drain, and he died on the way to the CT scan. There's another video of 3 girls laying on a bed. That's his 3 girls who are now orphaned. Their mother didn't even make it into the hospital. She was killed along with their other sister. I don't know what to tell you. I was here in June, nothing to this intensity. This is unbelievable. And the bombing is still going on. The rooms are still shaking. The screams are everywhere. It's insane. I need to just take 15 minutes, or even an hour, just to rest, to go back in there and go back down again. I feel awful to leave, but I've been there all night and I haven't stopped, and my legs are shaking and I feel dizzy and lightheaded. The smell of burnt flesh is still in my nose.
This is why there's students camping in colleges. This is why there are people marching in the streets. This is why people like Mahmoud Khalil spoke out. This is why you have channels like this, like these, that are constantly speaking out. And make no mistake, for anybody that says, well, that's way over there, that does have no effect on us over here. That's the testing ground for what they're going to do to us. The police literally train over there so that they can do the same things to us. If they're doing it to them, it's just a matter of time before they do it to you. That's a broken man. He's broken. He's a doctor and he's broken. Doing what he can to save lives, to the point where he's up for hours and hours and his legs are shaking and he's getting dizzy because he needs to eat, he needs to rest, but he can't because he has lives to save, because you've killed all the rest of the doctors. You killed the nurses. You killed the staff, the medical staff. You killed the ambulance drivers and the paramedics. And so some of these people, even if they survive, they can catch infections. They can bleed out if they're not taken care of. Or they can even just starve to death. And if it gets cold enough, they can freeze to death, catch hypothermia. And don't sit there and tell me, oh, well, it would have been better under Biden, because Biden was allowing the exact same things. And Harris would have allowed the same thing too, because they're all devoted to the power of the corporations. And why do I keep saying corporations, not Israel? Because Israel is a military outpost for the United States to use in order to keep its power and hegemony within that region. The United States does not care about Jewish people. Israel doesn't care about Jewish people. Because if they did, they wouldn't be doing settler colonialism. And if they cared about Jewish people, they wouldn't be putting them in harm's way by forcing them into conscription to commit a genocide against people. Israel is anti-Semitic. The United States is anti-Semitic. Don't you tell me that the United States cares about Jewish people when they were giving weapons to Nazis in Ukraine. Don't you tell me that the United States is not anti-Semitic when we did Operation Paperclip and we told a whole bunch of Nazi scientists and brought them into our country. And they're in all levels of our government. Don't tell me that the United States is anti-Semitic, is not anti-Semitic, when they literally allow neo-Nazis to march through our neighborhoods, and including black neighborhoods. Don't come for me. Because the United States never really cared about Jewish people. Israel never really cared about Jewish people. It's about power and control of our region. I've said it before and I say it again. There are hundreds of millions of cubic tons of liquefied natural gas and oil underneath Gaza and off the coast of Gaza. And of course they want that. And of course they want to build the real estate over there so that Israelis can party and have a good old time and take over the land and homes that Palestinians had. And they didn't want to expand it. And also they want to build the Ben Gurion Canal as well because they want to compete with the Suez Canal. It's all about money and resources. It's all it's about. So much so that the United States is even willing to jail and imprison people who have a permanent residence. And it's not just brown people. White people, white Europeans that are living here or visiting here are now being abducted by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. White people. And we say, if they do it to us, they're going to do it to you. Now they're doing it. American Medical Association, where the hell are you? American Pediatrics Association, where the hell are you? All of these medical scientists, doctors, administrators, the nurses, the specialists, where the hell are you speaking out? Where are you? Because if something like that happened here, you would want them out there, over there to speak out, wouldn't you? And yet you're not speaking out. We literally have to appeal to this government to allow some Palestinian kids to get life-saving surgeries just so that they can survive. Trust me, I helped welcome one back in December. And this is the same government that talks about terrorism. But when it comes to us black people, they don't give a shit. Because if the government actually cared about terrorism, they go after the homegrown terrorists here. But their anti-Semitism that is embedded within the United States is also embedded with anti-blackness and white supremacy. Let me show you all what this too. I've been meaning to share this. Unapologetically African says Lincoln Heights, Ohio formed armed community defense in wake of a Nazi rally. The town was one of the first self-governing black communities in the North, found in the 1920s during the Great Migration as refuge for black citizens escaping Jim Crow. Let's share this right here because I want you guys to see this. Where we literally have to arm ourselves and defend our communities because police and the U.S. government won't do a damn thing for us.
These aren't police officers or soldiers.
They're business owners, their fathers, their sons, daughters.
These are civilians, members of the Lincoln Heights Safety and Watch Program.
It's a duty. Okay, let's go.
The duty, protecting their neighborhood, the majority black village of Lincoln Heights, Ohio. After neo-Nazis held a rally here last month, carrying rifles, waving swastikas, and hurling racial slurs, just moments before children were let out of school.
So they can do this, but Mahmoud Khalil can't say free Palestine. They're trying to deport him, and yet these guys aren't thrown in jail. They're not in prison. You see the contradictions? So he uses his free speech. They're like, oh, deport him. They use their free speech, and they're allowed to intimidate a black neighborhood. There's congruency between Nazism and Zionism. Remember that. Let's finish this up.
At the time, law enforcement officials said the neo-Nazis did not break any laws, but an investigation by county prosecutors is ongoing. Weeks later, the KKK came with these flyers.
First African-American community above the Mason-Dixon line of staff.
Safety and Watch Group spokesperson Durrance Daniels says the police did not do enough, which was more chilling because the town was founded in the 1920s as a safe haven for black residents.
Lincoln Heights is our home. If somebody broke into your home, you call the police, and the police says, you know, if they do it again, we haven't broken any law, so we're just going to allow them to break into your home again. What would you do?
Are you worried at all that having a potentially armed response could just create more friction, create more danger?
Let me answer that question. Because I really want to make this abundantly clear. Her asking that question. Do you ask that question of the United States? If somebody's coming to threaten your area and you show them that you're strapped, that's what we call a deterrent, because the police won't do a damn thing for us. It's actually in the Supreme Court. They actually ruled that the police do not have a constitutional duty to protect us. But that being said, then what does that leave us with? That means we have to protect ourselves, just like the Palestinians. True story. See, here's the thing. What we did back in the day with the Black Panther Party. Do you know what the actual name for the Black Panther Party was? It was the Black Panther Party for self-defense. What was the self-defense for? Need we remind you, it was against white supremacists and racist police that terrorized their neighborhoods. Oh, well, here we go again. But the United States ain't doing anything about that. And just like they're siding with the people who are doing the oppressing here, they're siding with Israel that's doing the oppressing, the Palestinians, the people in Lebanon, the Yemenis, and Iran. There is really no, there's no, you should not be confused and think, well, if you guys start picking up arms, then they're going to pick up arms. They already have arms, number one. Number two, we're showing them, okay, fuck around and find out. And this is one of the things that gets me, and I know this segment is going a little long, but I just got to say this. A lot of times, some Black people say, well, I'm not my ancestors. Baby, a lot of your ancestors threw them hands, through them elbows, through some knees in order to resist being captured, taken on a ship, and brought over to this land. We are our ancestors, but we just have to be like our ancestors that fought back. You have to awaken that inner Nat Turner in you. And white people, that inner John Brown has to come out. Because I have no tolerance, none, for white supremacist group to terrorize us or a Zionist group to terrorize other people around the world, especially Palestinians. I have no tolerance for that. And that's what the United States backs both of. Let's continue.
Answer that by saying, I've never felt safer as a Black man in my community than I have right now.
The mayor of Evendale, which oversees the police force that responded that day, said in a statement to NBC News, our emphasis on de-escalation and public safety resulted in the incident's resolution without injuries to any of the persons involved. But residents here say they can't afford to wait. Every day, the Safety and Watch group escorts children to school and patrols the streets.
Why do you all wear masks?
Those Nazis, we have reports of them finding our backgrounds, so we're not hiding ourselves from the residents, but we're protecting our family from what we're doing out here.
While many
Palestinian resistance has to cover their face so that they won't go after their families or what's left of their families. Because it's not just the people who are white supremacists. These aren't just some, and I don't mean to demean like all white people. I'm talking about the racist ones. They're not just some Jim Bob that drives a truck and lives in a double wide. No. Some of these people, particularly a lot of these men, are judges, police officers, prosecutors, business owners, on top of other different sectors of our society. Some of them have a New York accent. Some of them may have an accent that from Massachusetts. Some of them may have a Chicago accent. Some of them are from California. It don't matter. They're not always from the South. And we're talking about here in Ohio. So let's get real. These are people who have real institutional power that are also in these groups as well.
Many locals do support the security group. Some, like business owner Eric Ruffin, say they wish the group wasn't needed.
We don't want to become what we hate. We don't want to become a group of people that walk around feeling like we have a reason in America to have to protect ourselves.
And this
What we do, and we've had to have that. We've had that reason. We had that reason for 249 years, bro. What are you talking about? All the slave revolts that have happened, we have had a reason. The Native Americans had a reason for 500 years to protect themselves. We have had a reason for 400 years to protect ourselves. Many groups within South America had many reasons to protect themselves. The Palestinian people have reasons to protect themselves. Do I wish we didn't have to? Absolutely. Absolutely. But oppressors speak a certain language. And unfortunately, some groups will have to defend against that language that oppressors speak. Let's finish this up.
community
Stand up.
Stand up.
is
You're
not
not alone.
backing
Sending
down.
their message.
Morgan Radford, NBC News, Lincoln Heights, Ohio.
So when it comes to what Donald Trump is doing, you don't think Donald Trump's not going to want to crack down on groups, black groups like this that are patrolling their community, to making sure that the community members are safe? Black Americans? Oh, you don't think he's not going to crack down on them too? Just like he's cracking down on the PFLP and Hamas and Hezbollah? Oh, baby. COINTELPRO is going to be on crack soon. It's coming back with a vengeance. This is why I encourage you to learn how to defend yourself, especially those of you who are marginalized. And I want to say a special thing to my LGBTQ brethren out there. Baby, listen to me. Learn to defend yourself. And safely utilize the Second Amendment. To my Black American brothers and sisters and they, thems, learn to defend yourself in many different forms. Look, I got to do it too. Learn the laws, learn your rights within this country. To my disabled people, same thing goes out to you and whatever you can do. I do not trust neither party nor this government as far as I can throw it. Just be safe. And this is why you build community, because there's strength in numbers. If you're really going to resist, you got to resist. Thank you so very much for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.